Alright, let's give this a second try. First time, unfortunately, crashed on me. So, Gantos asked me if there's any works of, well, not even any works of fiction, any media that evokes an emotional reaction from me, and if there's any I still watch, like I can rewatch it re-invokes an emotional reaction. Um, so in my last attempt, I named three things that it did, and I'll actually at underneath this or above this, somewhere in my post, I will put time markers from when I'm discussing each of them, so people who wish to avoid spoilers can do so. And so quickly, those three will be Razafon. Get my hand back and Razafon. Um, wow, Angel Beats and Playa Magi Madoka Magica. I mean, there are others, definitely. Games, books, all sorts of stuff. But those three were kind of the first to come to mind when I thought about this. Also, when I tend to find something that invokes an emotional reaction, I have this weird habit of sort of hovering around it and re-experiencing it a bunch of times in a short period of time, and then not doing so for a long time. It doesn't tend to overly reduce the reaction, but for whatever reason, it's what I do. So, first off, Razafon, which is it's an anime. It's a lot like Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'd say better, but certainly it has a lot of similarities. It's got the teenager and the giant robot invading creatures. Not too sure how he feels about this, emotional trauma, relationships, all that sort of fun stuff. And the big one for that one is episode 19. In episode 19, we have to go into a bit of backstory here. And of course, major spoiler warnings. So the invaders are humans from another dimension called Mulians, because of course they are. In episodes 17 and 18, the protagonist returned to Tokyo, where he started off the show, escaping from, which is actually under their control, although no one living there knows that because they have mind control abilities. And so he returns there and he escapes again with a childhood friend of his. And all throughout episode 19, she starts experiencing weird hallucinations and thinks that her blood might be turning blue, which is a sign that you're actually a Mulian. It's all very complicated. Mulians seem to be born with red blood, but it turns blue when they gain powers or something. The show doesn't explain it super well. So she's freaking out a bit, but she doesn't tell him. She doesn't want to worry him, and frankly, she's not entirely sure what all this means anyway, because she hasn't been watching the show. Kind of understandably, she's been in Tokyo, all the cool stuff's been happening elsewhere. So, in episode 19, the protagonist and her are hiding out because he doesn't want to fight the Mulians anymore. He's sick of being used as a weapon, and he himself is a Mulian, and so he feels kind of conflicted loyalties there. But he's hiding out from the humans. He's also hiding out from the Mulians because they're kind of upset at him for repeatedly destroying their giant death creature robot things. So they're just generally hiding out. When a giant Mulian death robot creature thing called a Dolem shows up and starts attacking the city they're in, and he's of course confused. How on earth do they know where he is and everything? And he's conflicted because if he fights it, that blows his cover. I mean, it's kind of hard not to notice a giant robot battle. But he ultimately decides that it is worth it to blow his cover if it's to protect his friend, his childhood friend, and all these people. So he summons the robot, gets in fights. Now, this is when we find out. It had been implied earlier, but you wouldn't really pick up on it unless you were really paying attention and knew what to look for. That Dolems can't exist in our dimension unless they are anchored to a Mulian. And now, that doesn't mean that the Mulian they're anchored to controls them. They don't. It's been established before that they have almost no control over them. But without that anchoring, the Dolum just can't be here. And that anchoring involves a synchronization of essentially bodies and feelings. If you've seen Ava, you know roughly what I'm talking about here. What one feels, the other feels. Forces applied to one are applied to the other. You can probably see where this is going. So he starts fighting this Dolum, and of course it turns out it is anchored to his childhood friend. So every time he kicks it, she feels it, and she starts getting, like, I think she gets a leg broken, and she certainly starts bleeding and stuff. It's unpleasant. So she realizes quite quickly what's going on, which is impressive because, again, she hasn't been watching the show. But she realizing what's going on, uses what little of her strength there is, because of course she's being beat up, to grab a notebook and just write out repeatedly, "I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you." He, meanwhile, has finally decided that he can go through with being a weapon if it means defending those he cares about, because if there's one thing the episode does, it really likes heaping on that dramatic irony. And so he keeps attacking the Dolum, and then the synchronization between it and his childhood friend gets even stronger, and the lights in the city go out and then start turning on in windows and stuff, in a pattern to spell out in one of the Japanese alphabets, I don't know which one, "I love you," which is, of course, what she's writing. He doesn't notice that because, of course, he's busy fighting a giant killer creature thing. So he defeats it handily, returns to the hotel room where they're hiding out, finds her dead, blue blood just everywhere, notebook filled with her writing, "I love you." He pretty quickly figures out what's going on, and it just crushes him. And it crushes the audience too. When I recount it, it sounds very melodramatic and over the top and everything, but in this episode itself, it works very well. Yes, it does. Sorry, cat has opinions apparently. Very, very, very well. Razafon has some flaws, some larger than others, but episode 19 is just excellently done. And because this crashed last time I got to 10 minutes, what I'm actually going to do is split this into 2 videos, so just stick with me, I'll be right back. Alright, I am back. Hopefully it won't crash this time. So, in this video I'll cover the other 2 I mentioned, which need a bit less setup, and those would be Angel Beats and Playa Magi Madoka Magica. I can't pronounce Italian, so I have horribly mangled that last one. So, Angel Beats. It's by Key Visual Arts, or Studio Key something. Letters K-E-Y appear somewhere in their name. So, since they're also the people who did Clannad and Air and a whole bunch of other stuff, obviously this is... It was going to be sad. What they do is they set up extreme sadness, melodrama, and then just kind of wallow in it. But I found Angel Beats worked really, really well. It's really easy to go over the top with your sadness melodrama, and it just ends up being silly rather than emotional. But Angel Beats didn't do that for me, so props there. So, basic premise, it's the afterlife. The afterlife is a high school, naturally. Main characters are trying to figure out what the heck is going on, why they're in their afterlife, why they're in the afterlife. No, not so much why they're in the afterlife as what the heck is going on in this afterlife. Like, why is it a high school? Why are some people disappearing? All that stuff. It turns out the purpose of this afterlife is for people who had unfulfilled desires to allow them to fulfill them before, it's implied, reincarnating, or maybe just passing on somehow into the true afterlife, whatever. Anyways, it's not the true final afterlife, it's just sort of an intermediate step. And so once you've kind of fulfilled your dreams, well, achieved happiness is, I think, how it works. Once you've achieved happiness, you vanish from the high school, move on to the next one. Next one? Next world. I'm sorry, I'm tired. So, throughout the show, there have been sad moments because the show builds up what characters really desire and then shows them working towards it and then kind of unexpectedly achieving it and then just vanishing. And at first you don't know why, so it's doubly sad. And then eventually you do figure out why. And then in the final episode, the three protagonists have allowed everyone else to pass on. They figured out how the system works. They've helped everyone move on to the next life. It's just them. And so they all know that they're going to have to say goodbye to each other and move on. And they decide the best way to do it is by holding a fake graduation ceremony for just the three of them. And they go through the whole thing and give speeches to each other and say goodbye and say how important they all were to each other. And it is just so sad. I mean, good way sad. At least they're not like dying, but it sounds cheesy. Even in the show, they remark that it sounds cheesy, but they do it so very, very well. It's just excellent. That one I actually haven't rewatched. Even Razafon, I've seen episode 19 twice. I haven't watched the end of Angel Beats more than once. It's something. Right. Sorry. So next and finally, Madoka Magica. The whole show, really, but I mean, it just throws these wham curveballs at you not out of nowhere. It hints at a lot of them, but it just throws them at you and bam, and it just keeps going. I mean, it's not sad, but episode 3 is pretty shocking. Anyone who's seen the show knows what I'm talking about there. And, of course, there's the final episode. But for me, the part that gets me, I don't remember exactly which episode it is. It's one of the last ones, 10 or 11, where we find out what Homura's deal is, essentially. So, for those who haven't watched the show and who aren't going to watch the show, here's a spoiler. If you are going to watch it, definitely stop now. It's a great show. It's only 13 episodes. It is excellent. Go watch it now. I'll wait. The video will still be here while you do that. So, throughout the show, there's been a magical girl showing up called Homura, who keeps preventing Madoka from becoming a magical girl and keeps berating her every time she tries and keeps attacking the bunny cat that keeps making the offer to her, and just she's very sort of cold and emotionless, but very serious that no matter what, Madoka should not get magical powers. And then in one of the last episodes, you find out why. And by this point, it's been revealed that becoming a magical girl in this setting is very, very bad. So you have to fight witches. It's often fatal. It means giving up your soul, essentially. It gets ripped out of your body and stored in a little jewel that you carry around with you, which to me doesn't sound that bad in and of itself, but the fact that it happens without you knowing is pretty bad. And the protagonist has just found out that witches are actually magical girls, and what happens is, as magical girls fight witches more and more, eventually they just get so worn down by it that they despair. They essentially just completely give up, and when they do that, they turn into a witch and start attacking people and other magical girls. So the whole system is rigged. And so the episode shows us that Homura used to be a very quiet, shy girl who discovered the whole magical girl system, became a magical girl, and helped Madoka and some others fight witches. and then discovers the whole secret behind it, that magical girls become witches and that it's all very unsafe and everything. Or rather, sorry, the first time through she doesn't become a magical girl, but she does find out about all this stuff, and then watches as Madoka dies fighting a witch, and Madoka and Homura is so devastated by this that she wishes to become a magical girl, and as her wish, because when you become a magical girl you get one wish for anything you want, she wishes she could go back in time and have the power to save Madoka, which she does. She goes back in time, she becomes a magical girl, then fights, and at the same point, finding the same sort of uber witch, she and Madoka win, but at the cost of Madoka turning into a witch herself. So Homura loops back in time again, and you find out that she's gone through this loop many times. The show never says exactly how many, at least a half dozen, almost certainly many, many more, given how well she knows what's going to happen. And so for time after time after time, she's just kept resetting the clock to try and save Madoka over and over and over, and the emotional toll on her has been extreme, because every time she thinks she's won, it's torn away from her, and she keeps watching friends make the same mistakes over and over, and there are times when she tries to talk them out of it and to take a different path, and that never works right either, and so she then ends up in the present timeline, after countlessly iterating, she just breaks down and sobs to Madoka that she thinks she's been lost for a very, very long time now, and it is just devastating. Now, I have a bit of a thing with Groundhog Day loops. They affect me just thinking about them. I suspect I would not handle being trapped in one of them well at all. So watching one destroy someone else is just, oh. And then of course, I had to watch someone's review of the series, of website SF Debris, which is excellent. But anyways, and he, because clearly he just hates happiness, threw together a very quick little AMV of watching Homura go through the loops and notice it, and some key phrases from earlier that hinted at what was going on, and just her despair growing and everything, set to Time After Time, which of course it was. So now I can't listen to that song without tearing up. And I mean, it's a little bit of a sad song, but it's not that amazing. But just the association between that and Madoka Magica for me now, and it's like I hear that, I'm like, oh no, oh no, no, Homura, no, Homura, no. So yeah, across, about 20 minutes, those are kind of three examples of things that have a big emotional impact on me. Hopefully that answers the question, and hopefully I haven't been just nattering on for too long. My next question and everything like that will be in my post. Alright, nice to talk to you again. See you.